The staging area behind Terminal 3 of Crescent International Airport was unnervingly quiet, save for the low hum of the air conditioning and the steady breathing of a large animal. Officer Grant was down on one knee on the cold tile floor, his eyes level with Rex, the solid black and dark sable German shepherd who had been his partner for the last 5 years. This wasn't a mandatory equipment check, it was their ritual, a ritual of survival. Grant's calloused hands held no weapon, no radio. He gently lifted Rex's front left paw. His fingers traced the thick, warm, and calloused pads, carefully inspecting the webbing between each toe. He was looking for tiny cuts, thorns, or shards of glass that might have been picked up on their last shift. "Pads are a little dry today, old buddy," Grant whispered, his deep voice just loud enough for Rex to hear. He took a dab of paw balm from a small tin in his pocket and worked it gently into a rough spot on the dog's heel. Rex didn't pull away. On the contrary, the 90-pound animal leaned forward, putting his weight against Grant's shoulder. He nudged his cold, wet nose into the crook of Grant's neck and took a long, deep breath. This wasn't a professional sniff. It was a hug. Rex was anchoring himself to Grant, finding peace in his handler's familiar scent, a mix of cheap soap, black coffee, and absolute trust before they stepped out into the waiting chaos. Grant paused, letting Rex lean on him. He wrapped an arm around the dog's thick, muscular neck, working his fingers into the dents. Fur at the nape, scratching the one spot Rex loved most. He could feel the powerful, steady beat of Rex's heart through the solid wall of muscle. "I know," Grant said, as if Rex had just confided. "Something complex. I've got your back. You've got mine. Same as always." Rex let out a low rumble in his throat, a vibration that resonated straight through Grant's chest. The dog's intelligent. Amber eyes locked with his. In that gaze was not the obedience of a pet, but the understanding of an equal warrior. They didn't need a leash to connect them. They were bound by an invisible cord, woven from 1,000 hours of training and 100 life-or-death encounters. Grant gave Rex 2 firm pats on the shoulder, the signal to begin. "Let's go to work." The moment the double doors swung open, the noise of the terminal hit them like a wave. The rolling of suitcase wheels on terrazzo, the blare of PA announcements, the cries of children, and the clamor of 100 conversations. Rex's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The head that had been nestled against Grant's shoulder was now held high, ears swiveling like radar dishes, tail held low in a state of alert readiness. Grant held the leather leash loosely, but he wasn't guiding Rex. He was letting Rex lead. They moved through the throng of people near the security checkpoint. Rex worked with incredible focus. His nose skimmed over duffel bags, jeans, sneakers. His response was swift and decisive. Clear, clear, clear. But as they passed pillar number 4, near the elevator from the parking garage, Rex froze. He didn't stop to investigate a scent the way he would with narcotics. He stopped as if he had run into an invisible wall. The leash went taut in Grant's hand. He looked down. The fur along Rex's spine was raised in a jagged ridge. His front paws were planted so firmly on the slick tile that his claws made a faint, scratching sound. "Rex," Grant asked, his right hand instinctively going to the holstered pistol at his hip. "What is it?" Rex didn't bark. For drugs, he would sit. For explosives, he would lie down passively. For an assailant, he would bark. Aggressively. But this time, Rex did something Grant had never seen in his entire career. He turned his head to look back at him, his eyes wide with a desperate panic, and let out a low, guttural whine that was half growl, half plea. It was the sound of primal fear. A chill ran down Grant's spine. Rex wasn't afraid of guns, knives, or fire. What could possibly make a seasoned canine look at his handler for help? The smell of death. The thought flashed through Grant's mind. Not the scent of a corpse, but the scent of impending destruction. Rex whipped his head back around. His gaze locked on a target 30 feet away. A young woman, her face gaunt from lack of sleep, was hurriedly pushing a gray baby stroller. She was trying to weave through the crowd toward the check-in counters. Before Grant could give a command, Rex acted. The dog launched himself forward with the force of a locomotive. The leash yanked so violently that Grant nearly pitched forward, forced to let go to avoid being dragged across the floor. "Rex! Hail!" Grant shouted, but his voice was swallowed by Rex's own ferocious roar. Rex wasn't running to sniff. He was running to intercept. He dodged a luggage cart, vaulted over a velvet rope barrier, and charged straight for the mother and child. "No!" the woman screamed, seeing the massive black beast bearing down on her. Passengers screamed and scattered. A nearby TSA agent fumbled for his baton. But Rex didn't make contact with the mother. He slammed straight into the frame of the stroller. Crunch! The impact was so powerful it knocked the stroller from the mother's hands, sending it tipping over and crashing to the floor. The piercing cry of a newborn baby tore through the air. "My baby! It's killing my baby!" the mother shrieked, lunging forward to strike Rex. "Get back!" Grant was already there. He didn't pull Rex away. He didn't yell at his dog. In that chaotic moment, when the entire world saw a crazed dog attacking an infant, Grant saw the truth in Rex's body language. Rex wasn't standing on the baby. He was standing over it. He was straddling the infant, who was now on the floor, his back turned to the child, and his head facing the overturned stroller, teeth bared in a silent, vicious snarl at something unseen. A large man from the crowd rushed forward, aiming a kick at Rex's side to save the baby. Grant drew his weapon, not on Rex, but aimed at the ceiling. "Back off! Everyone, get back now!" Grant bellowed with such authority that the man froze, the color draining from his face. "Nobody touches that dog. He's protecting the child." Grant's trust was absolute. He was betting his career, his reputation, and possibly his freedom on Rex's actions. He ran to his partner's side, his own weapon now held low, eyes scanning the area, forming a protective perimeter around his four-legged friend. "Rex, hold," Grant commanded, his voice firm but not angry. Rex didn't move. He was trembling. Grant could see the powerful muscles in his haunches quivering. He was terrified, but he didn't budge an inch. He was using his body as a living shield, completely covering the crying infant, Evan, beneath him. And then Grant saw what Rex saw, from the pile of blankets that had spilled from the overturned stroller. A cylindrical metal object rolled across the tile floor. It was the size of a soda can, smooth and unmarked. It came to a stop just inches from Rex's nose. A cold hiss echoed in the sudden silence. The top of the canister popped open. A plume of frigid white vapor escaped, carrying the acrid smell of chemicals and ozone. Rex's growl deepened, no longer a threat but a sound of desperation. He lowered his body, pressing his belly closer to the ground to better shield the baby, his head still held high, facing the canister. From within the vapor, something moved. Fast, unnaturally fast. A thin, metallic leg, sharp as a hypodermic needle, hooked onto the lip of the canister. Then a second, a third. The creature pulled itself from its shell. It was like no animal on Earth. Its body was segmented, encased in an iridescent, blue-black metal shell the size of a grown man's outstretched hand. It had no eyes, only a cluster of vibrating sensors at its front and along. Whip-like tail that curved up over its back, dripping a viscous green fluid from its stinger. The biomechanical insect, a chimera, let out a high-pitched screech, a frequency so intense it made the glass on nearby storefronts vibrate. "What in God's name is that?" a passenger whispered. The chimera turned its eyeless head toward the nearest source of heat, the baby lying beneath Rex. In that frozen moment, Grant saw the pure terror in Rex's eyes. Every survival instinct was screaming at him to run, to get away from a monstrous thing that reeked of poison and death. The creature was an apex predator of a synthetic food chain, and Rex was only flesh and bone. But Rex had already made his choice. Instead of backing away, Rex bared every single one of his gleaming white teeth and let out a single, sharp bark that sounded like a hammer striking an anvil. He lowered his head, bringing his soft, vulnerable nose level with the creature's needle-sharp legs. He made himself a wall of fur and muscle, an absolute barrier between the monster and the innocent child. Grant saw Rex's tail tucked tightly between his legs, a sign of extreme fear. But his forepaws were nailed to the terminal floor. He glanced at Grant for a fraction of a second, his eyes pleading, "Do something, Grant. I can't hold it for long." Grant didn't hesitate. He understood the message. He understood that Rex was buying him precious seconds with his own life. "Protect the baby," Grant yelled to the stunned mother, then charged forward, not to catch the creature, but to back up the bravest partner he had ever known. Just then, a gunshot rang out. The gunshot wasn't from Grant's Glock. It erupted from the crowd, a sharp, deafening crack that shattered the tense atmosphere. The bullet chewed into the tile floor just inches from Rex's front paw, sending sharp fragments of ceramic flying. Rex flinched, not from fear but from the shock. He took a single step back, still shielding the baby, his growl fixed on the chimera, but his eyes darting toward the source of the shot. "Get down. Everybody on the ground," Grant roared, simultaneously tackling a bewildered TSA agent behind a concrete pillar. 3 men in black jackets, who had been melting into the crowd like ghosts, were now exposed. The passenger facade was gone. They moved in a triangle formation, suppressed submachine guns in hand, aimed directly at Rex and the biomechanical creature. Their objective was clear: retrieve or destroy, with no regard for collateral damage. In a heartbeat, Crescent Airport turned into a war zone. The panicked screams of hundreds of passengers mingled with the hiss of bullets and the deafening wail of emergency alarms. The point man, a burly figure with a long scar down his cheek, leveled his weapon at Rex. He didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Fwhip! Fwhip! The first round missed. The second slammed into a luggage cart next to Rex's flank. The dog yelped in pain as a piece of shrapnel tore into his shoulder, but he didn't run. He knew if he moved, the baby beneath him would be exposed to the line of fire. Grant didn't have to think. He rolled out from cover, pistol gripped in both hands, his sights locked on the scarred man. "Rex! Fast! Attack!" Grant shouted the German command, but instantly changed his mind when he saw a second gunman swinging his weapon toward the mother, who was crawling on the floor. "No! Rex! Schutz! Protect!" The split-second change in command would have confused any other dog, but not Rex. Amidst the gunfire and chaos, Rex tuned into Grant's voice like a high-fidelity receiver. He understood his handler's intent instantly. Instead of charging the gunman, Rex lunged, pushing the mother down behind a check-in counter, his body shielding her as a burst of automatic fire ripped through the space she had just occupied. Their coordination was almost psychic. Grant didn't need to see. Where Rex was, he could feel his movements. He fired 2 rounds in return, forcing the scarred man to duck back for cover. "Move! To the left!" Grant yelled, pointing toward the baggage carousel. Rex didn't hesitate. He grabbed the collar of the mother's jacket in his teeth and dragged her, helping her scramble toward the safer area, the baby still protected beneath his body. Grant laid down, covering fire as he retreated with them, creating a wall of lead between the assassins and the family. A loud explosion echoed as a stray bullet shattered a tempered glass. Advertisement above their heads. 1,000 tiny daggers of glass rained down. In a soldier's instinct to protect his partner, Grant didn't dive for cover. He threw himself over Rex, using his own broad back and Kevlar vest to absorb the deadly shower. Shards of glass sliced into his neck and arms, drawing blood, but Grant didn't care. All that mattered was that Rex was safe. Beneath him, Rex whimpered. He felt the weight and warmth of his handler covering him. He gave a quick lick to Grant's chin, tasting the salt of blood and sweat. A silent thank you, a promise to repay the debt. And Rex repaid it immediately. As Grant raised his head to assess the situation, the third assassin, a wiry man with cold, dead eyes, had silently circled around behind them. He raised a pistol, aiming directly at the back of Grant's head from point-blank range. Grant never saw him, but Rex did. No command needed. No hositashchen. Rex exploded from beneath Grant, launching himself over his handler's shoulder with a ground-shaking roar. The lunge was so fast the assassin never had a chance to fire. Rex's powerful jaws, like steel vices, clamped down on the man's gun hand. "Arg!" he screamed in agony as the pistol clattered to the floor. But the man was no amateur. He swung his left leg around, delivering a brutal, steel-toed kick to Rex's ribcage. Thud! The impact was sickeningly audible. It was a kick that could have broken the ribs of a lesser dog. Rex cried out, his whole body convulsing, but his jaw didn't let go. He clamped down harder, shaking his head violently from side to side, dragging the assassin to the ground. He would rather have his bones broken than let this man harm Grant. Grant spun around to witness the scene. Pure rage ignited within him. He lunged forward and slammed the butt of his pistol against the assassin's temple, dropping him instantly. "Rex! Out! Ouse!" Grant commanded, his voice cracking with worry. Rex released the man's arm and backed away, panting heavily. He was limping, his right hind leg held slightly off the ground from the force of the kick. Grant dropped to his knees beside him, ignoring the two remaining gunmen who were still firing from a distance. He took 3 precious seconds, 3 seconds in a firestorm, to run a quick, practiced hand along Rex's side, feeling for broken ribs. "You okay? Huh? Talk to me, buddy," Grant whispered, his hand trembling as he touched Rex's heaving flank. Rex looked up, his eyes still burning with combat focus. But the look he gave Grant was impossibly soft. He gave a single, quick lick to Grant's blood-streaked hand and gave one short wag of his tail. "I am okay. We're not done yet." Rex's resilience fueled. "Grant." He nodded, gave his partner a firm squeeze on the shoulder, and got back to his feet. "All right, let's end this." During the firefight, the Chimera, the cause of all the chaos, had seized its opportunity. Agitated by the noise and the scent of cordite, it had abandoned its attack and scurried away like a silver blur, crawling over a counter and disappearing into the gap of a moving baggage conveyor belt. The scarred man, the leader, saw it happen. He shouted a string of angry foreign words into his radio, then abandoned his injured comrade, vaulted over the counter, and chased the creature into the depths of the baggage handling system. "It's on the move. He's after it," Grant yelled, reloading his weapon. The baggage system was a vast, dark labyrinth that led down into the sublevels and maintenance areas. If the creature got down there, or if the criminal got his hands on it, the disaster would be uncontrollable. Grant looked at the dark, narrow opening where the conveyor belt vanished behind a wall of heavy rubber flaps. He knew he couldn't get through there fast enough. He was too big, too slow compared to the creature and the assassin. Only one of them could do it. He looked down at Rex. The dog stood beside him, panting, his legs still injured, but his nose was already working, tasting the heavy chemical trail the Chimera had left behind. He was waiting for the command. Grant's heart seized in his chest. To send Rex in there alone, into the dark, against a lethal bioweapon and a heavily armed killer, was sending him to his death. Every protective instinct in Grant screamed at him to keep Rex here. "Don't do it. You'll lose him forever." But then he glanced over at the mother and child, huddled in the corner. He saw the wounded passengers scattered across the floor. The weight of his duty settled on his shoulders. And most of all, he looked into Rex's eyes. There was no hesitation there. Rex knew his mission. This is what he was born for. He was ready. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Grant knelt down, taking Rex's furry face in his hands one last time. He pressed his forehead against his dog's, channeling all his trust and love into that one. "Touch. Listen to me." Grant's voice was a raw, broken whisper. "I can't go with you on this part. You have to go alone." Rex whined softly, pressing his head harder into Grant's hands. "Find it. Rex. Find that thing. Don't let him get it." "And," Grant's voice caught, and he took a shaky breath. "And you come back to me. You hear me? That's an order." Grant released him and pointed a commanding finger at the dark opening of the conveyor belt. "Go. Such. See." Rex let out one resounding bark of vocal promise. He glanced back once at the baby, Evan, the small life he had just risked everything to save, as if to confirm his first mission was complete. Then, without another backward look, he was gone. His black shadow leaped onto the moving belt, weaving past suitcases, and vanished into the thick, mechanical darkness of the tunnel, where only the smell of grease, burnt rubber, and death awaited him. Grant stood there, watching until the last tip of Rex's tail disappeared. He felt as if a piece of his own soul had just been torn out and thrown into the abyss. He turned back, eyes blazing with fury, chambered around, and sprinted for the service stairs that led to the basement. "Hang on, buddy," he whispered through gritted teeth. "I'm coming for you." Grant pounded down the steel stairs into the maintenance sublevel, the echo of his boots like a hammer against his ribs. The air here was thick with the smell of machine oil, metallic dust, and something far more sinister, the scent of burnt ozone, the signature of the bioweapon. "Rex, don't do anything stupid," Grant yelled into the void, his voice lost in the thunderous rumble of massive machinery. At the end of a long, cavernous corridor, where the main airport ventilation system converged, a horrific scene unfolded before him. It was the main exhaust hub, the massive lungs of the entire terminal. Turbine fans 15 feet in diameter were spinning slowly, creating a powerful, pulling draft. Perched on the very edge of the primary air duct was the Chimera. Its metallic shell was no longer blue-black. It was glowing a pulsating, incandescent red. Swelling like an overstimulated heart, it was vibrating violently, its legs scraping against the metal housing, preparing for its final stage, self-destruction to release a cloud of deadly neurotoxin into the air system. And standing between that monster and the gate of death was Rex. The dog was in bad shape. His right hind leg, where he'd taken the brutal kick, trembled and refused to hold his full weight. Blood from the gash on his shoulder had matted a large patch of his fur. But Rex stood his ground, paws planted firmly on the steel grating, head low, teeth bared in a defiant growl. 15 feet away, the scarred leader leaned against a railing, a pistol in his hand. He was panting, drenched in sweat, his wild eyes darting between the multi-million-dollar creature and the dog blocking his path. "Move, you animal!" the man screamed, raising his gun and aiming it squarely at Rex's head. "I'll blow your brains out." Rex didn't look at him. His amber eyes were glued to the Chimera. His animal instinct told him the thing in front of him was more dangerous than any gun. He could feel the heat radiating from it, smell the acidic chemicals leaking from its cracking shell. He knew it was death, and he knew if it got into that giant fan, that smell of death would blanket everyone, including Grant, including the baby he had just saved. The Chimera let out a final, piercing shriek and coiled its body like a compressed spring. It was going to jump, not away, but directly into the spinning blades of the turbine. In that life-or-death instant, Rex didn't wait for a command. He didn't wait for Grant to save him. He didn't care about the gun pointed at his head. He had only one thought: it does not get past me. As the monster launched itself into the air, arcing toward the fan of death, Rex launched himself too. It was a leap of absolute sacrifice. Rex's powerful body stretched out mid-air, intercepting the Chimera's trajectory. His mighty jaws opened wide, and crunch, he snatched the monster right out of the air. But this was no rubber toy or padded training sleeve. The moment Rex's teeth sank into the superheated shell, the Chimera initiated its last defense mechanism. A wave of highly corrosive acid and intense heat erupted directly inside Rex's mouth. A piercing, agonized yelp echoed through the basement, a sound that tore Grant's heart to shreds as he rounded the corner. White smoke billowed from the corners of Rex's mouth. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. The pain must have been unimaginable, like biting down on a piece of acid-soaked, white-hot coal. Any living creature's natural reflex would be to spit it out, to save itself. But not Rex. He hit the steel floor with a heavy thud, rolling once, but his jaw remained locked. He held the creature in a death grip, allowing the acid to eat away at his gums and tongue, enduring the soul-shattering pain, refusing to let the weapon fall into the ventilation system. He lay there, his body convulsing, whimpers caught in his throat by his clenched jaws, his eyes rolling back from the agony, but still burning within. Unyielding fire of defiance. The scarred leader was stunned for a second by the dog's sheer tenacity, but then a cruel smirk spread across his face. He adjusted his aim on Rex's head. "D, you stupid dog." His finger tightened on the trigger. Bang! The shot was clean, loud, and final. But Rex didn't fall. It was the leader who collapsed. A bullet hole had appeared in his shoulder, sending his pistol flying. He screamed and crumpled to the ground. Grant stood at the end of the corridor, smoke curling from the barrel of his Glock, his chest heaving. He didn't spare the criminal. A second glance. Tossing his own weapon aside, he sprinted toward Rex. "Rex! Rex!" Grant slid across the grating, dropping to his knees beside his partner. The sight before him felt like a physical blow, crushing the air from his lungs. Rex's mouth was foaming with a mixture of white froth, blood, and the creature's green fluid. His muzzle was already swelling, and smoke still trickled from between his teeth. But he wouldn't let go. He looked at Grant with pain-filled, watering eyes, tail tucked, terrified that if he opened his mouth, the nightmare would start all over again. Shaking, Grant pulled out the metal containment box he had retrieved from one of the other apprehended criminals. He placed it directly in front of Rex's nose. "Let go. Rex, please let it go." "Buddy." Grant's voice shattered, tears streaming freely down his face. "It's safe now. I'm here. Let it go." Rex looked into Grant's eyes, searching for confirmation. He needed to know Grant was safe. He needed to know the mission was over. "I promise," Grant sobbed, stroking his dog's feverishly hot head. "I promise it's okay. Let go for me, Rex." Hearing that loving, reassuring voice, Rex finally relaxed his locked jaw. The chimera, now just a mangled, leaking piece of metal, dropped with a soft thud into the containment box. Grant slammed the lid shut, secured the latches, and kicked the box far away. The moment his burden was gone, Rex collapsed. His large body went limp, sinking onto the cold floor. He took ragged, shallow breaths that rattled in his chest, bloody foam bubbling from his lips. The full, unadulterated agony now washed over him, flooding his entire nervous system. "No, no, no. Stay with me. Rex, look at me." Grant was frantic. He, the officer known as the Man of Steel of the task force, a man who had never shed a tear at any crime scene, was now weeping like a child. He lifted Rex's head onto his lap, ignoring the blood and toxins soaking into his uniform. He didn't care about chemical exposure. He used his sleeve to wipe the foam from around Rex's mouth, trying to soothe the pain he knew was unbearable. "Hang on, buddy. You can't leave me. We made a promise," Grant whispered, bending low, pressing his cheek against Rex's hot brow. His tears fell into the dark fur. "You're such a good boy. You're my hero. Just hang on." Rex struggled to open his eyes. He wanted to lick Grant's face to comfort him, as he always did, but his tongue was too swollen, too burnt. All he could manage was the faintest of whines and the slightest twitch of his tail. It was almost nothing, but it was enough to tell Grant, "I'm still here. I'm not gone yet." The thundering of boots announced the arrival of backup, and medics. "Get back. Where's the hazmat team?" A paramedic yelled upon seeing Rex's condition. "That dog is contaminated. We need to get him in a quarantine kennel now. Get the veterinary stretcher." They moved to use a catch pole to push Grant away and secure Rex in a transport cage. "Don't you touch him." Grant roared, whipping his head around, his eyes red and furious like a cornered animal. Protecting its young. No caje. No one treats him like an animal. The entire team froze, stunned. Grant leaned down, sliding his arms under Rex's 90-pound frame. He gritted his teeth and, with a surge of adrenaline, lifted his partner into his arms. Rex cried out as he was moved, but as he felt himself cradled securely in Grant's embrace, he relaxed, his head slumping trustingly against his handler's shoulder. "Clear a path," Grant commanded, his authoritative voice returning even as tears still tracked through the grime on his face. He carried Rex and walked, step by steady step, through a corridor of fellow officers who had instinctively snapped to attention. He wasn't carrying a dog. He was carrying a warrior, a savior, a friend who had just walked through hell to save every life in this airport. 3 days later, City Central Veterinary Hospital. The quiet of the intensive care unit was broken only by the steady beep, beep of a heart monitor. The sterile scent of antiseptic had replaced the smell of airport smoke. Rex lay on a soft bed, surrounded by 4 lines. His muzzle was wrapped in white bandages, leaving only his nose and lower jaw free to breathe. The acid burns were severe, but the vets said he would live. He would lose part of his sense of taste and would carry the scars around his mouth forever, but he would live. Grant sat in a plastic chair beside the enclosure, not having left for 3 days. He was unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes, his uniform wrinkled, but he didn't care. His hand rested on Rex's front paw, as if he were afraid his friend would vanish if he let go. The door opened quietly. A nurse entered, followed by a young woman. It was Evan's mother. She looked completely different from the woman at the airport. The panic was gone, replaced by a profound, soul-deep gratitude. In her arms, she held a bouquet of bright sunflowers and a crayon drawing of a lopsided dog. "Officer Grant?" she asked softly. Grant looked up, gave a slight nod, and held a finger to his lips. The woman approached the bed. Her eyes welled up when she saw Rex lying there, wrapped in bandages. She no longer saw the ferocious beast that had knocked over her stroller. She saw a savior. She gently placed the flowers on a nearby table, then slowly knelt on the floor beside Rex's head. Rex, groggy from the pain medication, sensed the new presence. His ears twitched, and his heavy eyelids fluttered open. He recognized her scent, the smell of milk, baby powder, and the mother he had protected. He didn't growl. He let out a long, peaceful sigh. The mother reached out a trembling hand and lightly touched the soft fur on Rex's forehead, carefully avoiding his injuries. "Thank you," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you for not giving up on my son. Thank you for taking his pain. Evan and I owe you our lives." She leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to the dog's brow, a kiss filled with all the reverence a mother could give. "You're my son's guardian angel, Rex." Rex seemed to understand. His tail, which had been lying still under the blanket, gave a soft thump against the mattress. Thump, thump, a small gesture with a universe of healing power. When the mother left, the room returned to its quiet, but the air felt warmer. Grant stood and adjusted Rex's blanket. He leaned down, resting his forehead against his partner's. Their familiar ritual, a silent communion between 2 warriors. "See, everybody loves you," Grant whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Rex opened his eyes a little wider, looking directly at Grant. In those amber depths, the pain seemed to have receded. All that was left was pure, unconditional trust and love, eternal and unbreakable. He made a small effort to lift his head and, though it hurt, managed to work his swollen tongue out from the bandages and give a single wet lick to Grant's thumb. It was clumsy and weak, but to Grant, it was the most powerful medicine in the world. The scars around Rex's mouth would eventually heal, but they would never disappear. They would remain as medals of honor, a permanent testament to the day a dog chose to charge into the face of death to protect the living. Grant smiled, the first truly peaceful smile he'd had in years. He squeezed Rex's big paw gently. "Rest now, hero. We'll go home soon." And in the late afternoon sun, streaming through the hospital window, the man and his dog were a single, unbreakable silhouette, still, resilient, and whole.